Here's a sample of what you'll hear on today's episode of Holistic Health Matters.
I feel like more the forgiveness was more for me because I just didn't want that inside of me anymore. It just let something go off of my shoulders and my heart and just brought me a peace.
Welcome to the Holistic Health Matters podcast, where it's all about maximizing our health potential by aligning our lives more fully with God's design for spirit, mind, and body. I'm your host, David Sandstrom, naturopathic doctor and biblical health coach, and this is episode number 33. Today we have Carrie Portell on the show, and she is a drunk driving survivor with an amazing story. Carrie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about what happened to you.
Well, my story goes back 10 years. It'll be 10 years this December 29th that two of my children and I were hit by a drunk driver, and it was pretty severe. You know, it was not at a time that you usually think about being hit by a drunk driver. It was on Wednesday at around 6:20 in the evening that my middle two children and I were just going into town. And I don't remember it myself that there were four vehicles involved, but there was three of us in one lane, you know, following one another. And we were all hit at some point, you know, by the drunk driver. But our car was hit the most severely. Okay.
And what happened during the accident?
Actually, during the car crash, there was a truck and a trailer in front of me, and there was a Suburban that was directly behind me. And the three of us were laughing in the car. The girls were making a joke, and I had kind of looked at both of them. And when I took my eyes back to the road in front of me, there was this truck just barreling towards us, and he was on the wrong side of the highway. There's just a moment where you're completely astonished, but in the next moment, you know that this is going to happen and you're trying to search for any way possible to avoid it.
And this was just a couple days after Christmas on December 29th?
Correct. Yes.
Wow. Does this time of year bring back difficult memories for you?
It's always there. My birthday is actually Christmas Eve. So we celebrated my birthday and Christmas. And then, you have that time where the kids are off school in between Christmas and New Year's. And I was so busy having surgeries the first 4 years, and I always had one in December, that I really never had time to dwell on it. And I'm not really that type of person anyway, but it is just always there. It's not a looming feeling anymore. We all recognize it, but we say, thank God for what we have and that we're all still alive, instead of the opposite and thinking negatively towards it.
Yeah. Well, part of holistic health is processing our emotions properly. And I want to get into that a little later. But first, I want to clarify exactly what happened in the accident. So you were hit by a truck. Was it like a big semi or a pickup truck, or what was it?
I think it was, I think they said maybe a 1-ton GMC truck. So, just the normal truck, on a 2-lane highway.
And the driver was killed. The drunk driver was killed instantly, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And what happened to you all?
The girls each had moderate injuries. Our daughter, who was in the front seat, had a big seatbelt laceration in her abdomen. And then my daughter in the back seat broke her arm. Of course, there was lots of bruising, glass, small glass lacerations for them. But me, I had 2 points of impact. We hit head on, but then he hit the my driver's side door. So I had severe lower body damage. I had so many injuries everywhere, but my 3 worst were my pelvis and both of my lower legs and ankles.
So how long was your recovery?
It was actually 4 years total, because I was nonstop surgeries trying to get my bones to be able to hold my weight and just heal correctly. Because whenever they are shattered to that severity, some of those pieces of bone, the surgeon said, we couldn't use them. They were so splintered. So they were hoping that my bones would fill in themselves, and they just didn't get to that point. So I had 3 bone grafts, and then they had taken some of my bone marrow, on different surgeries to kind of fill in those spots that wouldn't heal correctly. And It took 4 years to be able to stand on my own, without any support. But since then, I've had many more surgeries. So to date, I've had 13 surgeries total.
Wow. That is amazing. I don't want to minimize what you went through because I can't even imagine having 13 surgeries, but I did have a ladder fall about 4 years ago. I fell 26 feet and I basically pile drive my tibia, the lower leg bone, through my heel bone, my calcaneus. Oh, yeah. And that bone was shattered as well. And the first surgeon I saw said that he wanted to fuse my ankle and I was going to lose the ability to tilt my foot. And that was a pretty big deal because here where I live in Roswell, it's very hilly. I always planned on getting a second opinion. And the next doctor I went to, I heard him talking with some of the interns in the next room. He walks in, and after he introduced himself, he said, "We've taken a look at your x-rays. I've got enough bone fragment to put your heel back together. We're not even going to talk about a fusion." And I said, "You're hired."
Oh, my God. Yes. Because that's actually what we've done. Both of my ankles are fused now after many surgeries. They just wouldn't hold up, and they cause so much pain. And then part of my pelvis doesn't move either.
Well, I'm very blessed. I had a great surgeon down here at Emory University in Atlanta, and I have almost full use of my foot back. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I thank God for how well I healed. So your journey was a lot longer. I was out of work for 7 months, but 4 years. Now that's a different story. I think that the perseverance and the mental battle that you must have been going through, it was probably very challenging for you. Am I right?
Oh, the mental battle, that is what it is all about. I mean, the physical you can get through, but having the mental tenacity to keep continuing, to strive towards walking was my main goal, and getting through the pain. I think that was the biggest challenge that I faced during this whole time. And honestly, it's still the biggest challenge because my pain has not ended, and nor will it ever end just because it's so severe. So mentally, every day is a mental game. Like I have to say, okay, Carrie, today is going to be a good day. And if it's not, then I have to say, okay, we're going to do whatever we can today, and we're just going to scratch it, and we're going to wake up tomorrow and try again.
Yeah. When I was laid up with my surgery, that was when I spent a lot of time finishing off my book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health. And one of the things I learned from doing that research is that mental emotional component can play a very big role in our physical health as well. Because when we hold on to toxic emotions such as bitterness, anger, rage, certainly hatred, those kinds of things, they will manifest in the physical, and they would absolutely impair your healing from this kind of trauma. So talk to me a little bit about how you handled that.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. In my presentations, one of the biggest points that I make is that if I held on to the bitterness and the frustration and just let my attitude slip really bad, there's no way that I would have healed to the point that I am today, because they weren't sure how well I was really going to be able to walk. And they were sure that I was going to be a full-time wheelchair user, pretty quickly. And
wow,
I've done really, really well for myself. And I think having a phenomenal support system is essential. And then honestly, just making the choice when you're in the moment, or in my case, every day I have to make a choice of what my attitude is going to be. If you don't do that or don't use your support system, you're healing both, I think, in all aspects, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, it's going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things is we have to consider is the placebo effect and the power of suggestion. When the surgeon in the white lab coat says, "You're never going to walk again," that can have a powerful impact on what your outcome actually is. So where are you at in your journey? Are you still in a wheelchair? Are you walking?
Yeah, I didn't use a wheelchair. Well, I should say I was in a wheelchair the first 2 years, pretty much full time, because I was having so many surgeries and my body could not hold my own weight yet. After that, I slowly started walking or standing, here and there. And then at that 4 years, I could take around 3,000 steps a day. Okay. And I did that for quite a few years. And then and my injuries just really started to deteriorate. And I started going lower and lower. And now I'm somewhere around like 1,700 this year. What I'm really trying to do is prioritize how I want to use my steps. When I'm in my house, I try to use my wheelchair as much as possible so that I can go like to the grocery store and walk around and just use my step accordingly. You know, if I want to go to like an event, like a family event or something where I know I need to use a few more steps than normal, I'll save them for that type thing. So it's definitely a lot of preparation.
Wow. I know one of the things that I would be struggling with if I were in your shoes, and that is, why me, God? Why did you allow this to happen to me? You're sovereign, you're in control, and yet this still happened. Have you ever asked yourself that question?
I have so many people ask me that question and say, you know, if it would have been me, I'd have been so angry. I don't know if it's because I was in so much pain and then having the constant surgeries that I just didn't feel like I even had time to ask why me. It might also be my personality, where I used to work in the healthcare field and I would see this type of thing happen to patients all the time. I just know it can always happen. So for me, I never asked why me, but I was really frustrated that I couldn't do the things that I used to be able to do. And having 4 young children, that is the part that really messed with my mind, was I couldn't be the mom that I knew that I should be able to be. And that was taken away from me. So I was really frustrated with that part, but I never really asked why me, because I knew that it could always happen, and I never thought it would, but I always had that inside of me. Well, you know, life happens. So what are we going to do now? That's the type of like questions and answers that I had for myself.
Right. I get it. So you've decided to make some improvements to your health and well-being. You're listening to shows like this where you can get information that can help take your health to the next level. The trouble is, getting educated and implementing effective strategies is time-consuming and can be expensive, not to mention overwhelming. That's why I wrote my book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health. In my book, I've taken 20 years of research and experience as a natural and holistic health coach and distilled it down to what you need to know to maximize your health potential in spirit, mind, and body. It's my contention that we maximize our health potential by aligning our lives more fully with God's design for spirit, mind, and body. My book, The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health, will put you on the fast track to the vibrant health and vitality you've been looking for. By the way, many of my recommendations won't cost you a nickel. They're free because a lot of my message is simply aligning our lives more fully with the Word of God. That doesn't cost you a thing. If you'd like to avoid overwhelm and get some biblically based holistic health information that you can implement right away, go to my website, davidsandstrom.com/book. That's DAVIDSANDSTROM as in Mike, .com/book, and you can learn more and pick up a copy today. If that doesn't work, you can go directly to Amazon. It's available there in paperback, Kindle, and Audible. Now let's get back to the show. Did you come to a point where you had to forgive this drunk driver?
I did. And actually it was pretty quickly. It was within the first, I would say 3 to 4 months that it really started consuming me. And it was, you know, I had all these questions for God, and I really wasn't hearing an answer. And in retrospect, you know, he couldn't really ask me to do anything or give me any answers because he just needed me to heal first.
Yeah.
There was a very specific point in time where I had this moment that I kept asking, you know, am I going to be okay? And am I going to be okay? And I really didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if it meant physically, because the emotional side was just tearing me up. Yeah. And that there was a moment where I felt like the impaired driver kind of called out to me, not in words, but in a feeling. And he said, "I'm sorry." And he's like, you're going to be fine. And it was like such a calm, peaceful way of telling me that, that I was blown away. And at that point in time, I just told him, I'm like, I forgive you. I know you didn't do this on purpose. I know you didn't intentionally set out to hurt my family and I forgive you. And I was alone in my house, and it was one of the biggest moments of my entire recovery.
Wow. That's pretty powerful. I talk a lot about forgiveness in the book, and I even have a whole chapter on it. I have an exercise in there for people struggling to forgive. And there's a lot of misconceptions about forgiveness. And if we don't learn how to do this right, if we don't get this right, it will lead to bitterness and resentment and anger, all kinds of toxic emotions. And we don't call those toxic emotions for nothing. There are a lot of misconceptions about forgiveness. And one is they don't deserve it, or I'll do it when I feel like it. Well, if we wait till we feel like it, we're probably never going to get around to it, right?
Sure. And I think some people hold on to that because they don't know what else to hold on to.
Yeah. And then the objection of they don't deserve it. Well, forgiveness always goes to the undeserving. Always. There's never a time that it doesn't. We're always ready to receive someone's forgiveness, but when it comes to us offering it, well, that's a horse of a different color, right?
It is, yeah. And I feel like more the forgiveness was more for me because I just didn't want that inside of me anymore. It just let something go off of my shoulders and my heart and just brought me a peace.
Excellent. That's a good word. One of the things I like to say is when we fail to forgive, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yes, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. That is a wonderful, wonderful way to say that. Honestly, I also feel like I didn't hold on to it because I just didn't have the energy to. I mean, it was taking all of my energy just to try to survive myself. I just didn't have the energy to hold on to any kind of hate.
Yeah, good for you for recognizing that. That's an amazing inner strength you've got.
I wish that would come to everyone who was in a situation like that. And I don't know why it came as quickly and easily as it did for me, but I sure am glad it did.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit more about what your healing journey was like, your surgeries and maintaining a positive attitude through all that.
Yeah, I feel like my healing journey is never going to end with this because I always, even today, will have moments where I feel like God kind of taps me upside the head and said, hey, here's a lesson. You need to slow down and you need to listen to it. But it was huge. I journaled a lot. And that was on the suggestion of actually my priest and my husband both said, you need to get some of this anxiety out of you and just journal out your thoughts. And that was the best suggestion that I had ever had.
Yeah, journaling can be very therapeutic, can it?
Oh, yes. And it was writing is kind of like my thing anyway, of how I get things out instead of talking. That's always been, even since I was, like a grade school, middle school, I would always write it out. My journal actually has become my book, which I am just finishing after all this time.
Wow.
But it was always a work in progress because every day was a new challenge. And when you're in that type of situation, the most trivial challenge becomes huge. So it didn't matter what it was. It was just one more thing I had to deal with. Consciously making choices and doing things to help my attitude, it was an everyday process. And sometimes it was like an every hour process.
Wow. So it doesn't come naturally, right? You had to pursue peace.
Oh, yes. I feel like I had to pursue it. I had to strive and actually make goals to heal.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine you had a lot of those.
Yeah, over and over again. I kept thinking, okay, I've done this. I should be good for a while. And then here would come another one.
Yeah. And you're probably not through if I don't miss my guess.
No, I'm not. And there's challenges I have every day. And, at some point we're going to have to do something else with my ankles, whether ankle replacements get good enough that they will support me, or at some point before that, I will be in a wheelchair full time just because the pain will get too severe. So there's always going to be challenges that I'm going to have to figure out and make a choice to get over.
I've got a good friend that had a similar accident to my ladder fall. He was jumping on a motorcycle, and he landed on the wrong side of those hills that the motocross bikes jump on.
Oh, yeah.
And he had severe damage to both his ankles, but one in particular. And the surgeons, the orthopedics, tell him that he's probably looking at ankle replacement sometime in his future. But they said, well, hold off as long as you can because the technology is advancing rapidly. If you can hold off for a couple of years, we might be able to do a better job.
Yeah, that's exactly what they've been telling me. They had really just started 10 years ago, and they're like, absolutely not. Don't even think about it right now. They said, give it 10 years. Well, it's been 10 years. And that's the same thing my surgeon says. They're just not where I would like them to be for your situation. So if you can keep holding off until, as long as possible, it just keeps getting better.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I heard you say is that you're almost finished with your book, and I firmly believe this, that God won't waste our pain. I'm guessing that your book is going to be a real inspiration to people. So talk to me a little bit about the book writing process, who you'd like to reach with that.
Yeah, actually, my journal became my book because I wrote about all of those moments and all of those lessons that I have learned, during those low and high points. And I just submitted it to the publisher. There's so many things in there that can be learned from. And I always tell everybody it doesn't have to be any kind of situation or challenge that is like mine, because all pain is pain. All pain hurts. So regardless of what situation everyone else is going through, they can totally relate to the pain, the challenges, the goal setting that you have to do to get through that challenge. So, it is for anybody and everybody, but I do talk a lot about my faith in there and God, because it was a integral part in me healing emotionally.
Good for you.
Yeah. Anybody that has any kind of challenge in their life will, I think, enjoy reading it.
I think you made an excellent point there, that one of the things I've learned from doing marriage ministry is that when it comes to emotional pain, anger. So if we've got an anger issue, dealing with the anger is just simply dealing with the symptom. And if we want to get to the root, we've got to go back to, well, what was the pain or the hurt that led to this anger?
Exactly.
And that often might lead you into a forgiveness journey. So, if we really want to get over this stuff, we want to do this stuff well, we've got to get beneath the surface if we want to do it. And it sounds like you've done a lot of that.
Yes. And it's hard work. That's why people don't want to do it, because it is painful and it is hard to go through all of that and do some admitting, do some acceptance. And that's why I think people they just keep holding on to the hate instead of going that route, because it is a long road and it's difficult.
Right. It's so much easier to go the negative route, right? It's a slippery slope, and it feels good at the moment, but in the long haul, it's very toxic to our systems.
Absolutely.
Carrie, let me ask you this. One of the things that I think is very applicable here in your story is the fact that we need to emphasize to young people, young drivers, just got their license a year or two ago, tend to be confident. That's why they send young people into wars, because they're invincible, right?
Right.
So our teenagers think they're invincible, but we know they're not. Talk to me a little bit about the message you have for teenagers and drunk driving.
The distracted driving presentation was one of my very first presentations because it was the obvious one. And whenever I'm speaking to teens, I'm able to give them a different perspective, because I was not the distracted driver. I was the person doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, and it still happened. So giving them the feel of what the consequences could be, not only to them, but to the person that they hurt, that's huge for them, because they don't normally see that perspective. It's also a motivational presentation, because these kids are going through things that we have no idea that they're going through. And for them to be able to see that, hey, Carrie was pretty down and out for a long time, but through the help of others and just having that positive attitude, she has been able to get to a point where she can handle this now. So maybe that means I can handle it as well. So that's huge for me as well.
Mm-hmm. When I was about 18, I got a speeding ticket. It wasn't, careless driving or anything like that, but it was a speeding ticket. So I went to driving school so I wouldn't get points on my license. And they brought in a guest speaker. And this guy was a police officer, and he was in charge of traffic homicide for Broward County, which is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He had a pretty dramatic story, and he said, every fatal accident in Broward County, I investigate. And I want to tell you something I've done too many times. I've had to pull the wallet out of a dead body, out of his pocket, and find the driver's license, and go to that young person's house, knock on the door at maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and ask the parents, is this your son or daughter? They'd say, yeah. Are they in trouble? Well, I have reason to believe your son was killed in an auto accident tonight. And that was really powerful. It really stuck with me about how when we get behind the wheel of a car, we have a lethal weapon in our hands. And as you said a moment ago, we need to consider not only ourselves, but the people that could get hurt by our actions. And we have to live with that for the rest of our lives.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things that when this has not happened to you, it's hard to even fathom. Not only the family of the victim has to live with it, the person who did it has to live with it as well.
Right. That's a tough thing to live with. Your story is great, Gary. I love it. You've persevered. You've overcome. You've connected with God. You've processed your emotions in a healthful way. You've got mental toughness that is very admirable. Hang in there.
I appreciate that compliment. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show, Carrie. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Carrie Portell. Her story really is a great one about having a physical challenge and properly handling the mental, emotional component and the spiritual component that were intimately connected to her healing in the physical realm. So I was inspired by it. I hope you were too. Her website, if you want to get a hold of her, is CareyPortell.com. That's CareyPortell.com. And she's also a photographer, and she specializes in farmhouse photography. She's got some great photos. You might want to check those out when you're on her website. If you're enjoying the show, I would appreciate you telling some friends about it. It sure would help. Another way you can help me spread the word is to go to Apple Podcast and leave a review there. If you have a hard time finding that, you can go to my website, davidsandstrom.com. And on the podcast page, I have a link that'll take you to Apple Podcasts where you can leave a rating and a review. I would appreciate it. Those reviews are a real source of encouragement to me, and it does help the show get found by other people. Once again, thank you for listening. I appreciate you. I enjoyed serving you, and I'll talk with you next week. Be blessed.